The Grand Hall of the Galaxy Council was the largest building ever constructed by intelligent life. It floated in the center of neutral space, far from any star system. A monument to cooperation between 1,000 different worlds. Giant pillars made of crystal held up a ceiling that showed the actual stars outside. Representatives from hundreds of species sat in curved rows that rose up like a stadium. Some had scales, some had fur. Some were made of pure energy. All of them considered themselves superior to the small group of humans sitting in the back corner of the hall. Park. Tai-Ho had been Earth's ambassador for 15 years. He was a thin man with gray hair and calm eyes that rarely showed emotion. He had learned long ago that showing feelings in this place was considered primitive. So he sat quietly as the High Chancellor, a tall being with blue skin and 4 arms, announced the Council's latest decision. The Valori Empire has demanded territory, the Chancellor said. His voice echoed through the hall. To prevent war, the Council has voted to offer them the outer systems of Sector 7. Tai-Ho felt his heart grow cold. Sector 7 contained 12 human colonies. 3 million people lived there, families, children, farmers, and teachers and doctors who had built new lives on distant worlds. The humans in those systems will be relocated, the Chancellor continued, as if he were discussing furniture. They have 60 days to leave their homes. This is the price of peace. Around the hall, representatives nodded in approval. A few looked at Tai-Ho with expressions that might have been pity. Most did not look at him at all. Tai-Ho stood up slowly. The movement was so unusual that several nearby delegates turned to stare. Humans never spoke at council meetings. They were Class 7 members, the lowest rank. They had no voting rights. They were expected to listen, obey, and be grateful for the privilege of membership. Ambassador Park, the Chancellor said, sounding annoyed. You wish to speak? No, Tai-Ho said. His voice was quiet but clear. I wish to leave. He walked down the long steps toward the center of the hall. His footsteps were the only sound. When he reached the Wall of Unity, where every member species had placed their symbol, he stopped. Earth's symbol was small and placed near the bottom, almost hidden. Tai-Ho reached up and removed it from the wall. The Chancellor laughed. What are you doing, human? Earth resigns from the Galaxy Council, Tai-Ho said. He held the symbol, a simple blue circle with green and white against his chest. Effective immediately. For a moment there was complete silence. Then the hall erupted in noise. Laughter mostly. Some confused murmuring. A few delegates shouted insults. Cannot be serious, the Chancellor said. 1 planet, alone in the universe? You will be destroyed within a year. Tai-Ho turned to face him. Perhaps. But we will be destroyed as free people, not as slaves who sacrifice our children to keep their masters comfortable. He walked toward the exit. No one tried to stop him. Why would they? Humans were weak. Humans were primitive. Humans had only joined the Council 300 years ago, begging for protection from the dangers of space. What threat could they possibly pose? As Tai-Ho reached the great doors, a delegate from the Morvani worlds called out mockingly, Where will you go, human? You have nothing without us. Tai-Ho paused. He did not turn around. We will go home, he said simply. Then he walked out, and the doors closed behind him. Within hours, the news spread across the galaxy. Most species found it amusing. A few found it sad. None found it concerning. Within days, human ships began leaving council space. Diplomats packed their offices. Scientists left their research posts. Engineers shut down their projects. Traders closed their shops. Everywhere across the 1,000 worlds of the council, humans quietly disappeared. On the planet Morvos, a human agricultural expert named Jisoo said goodbye to the local farmers she had worked with for 20 years. Who will manage the irrigation systems? They asked her. You will figure it out, she said with a small smile. She did not tell them that the systems were more complex than they knew, or that the crops would fail without constant adjustment. She simply left. On Station Helix 9, a human navigation officer named Do-Yan, uploaded his final course calculations for the great trade routes. His supervisor, a reptilian creature with 3 eyes, barely acknowledged his departure. "We have your programs," the supervisor said. "We do not need you." Doyen nodded politely. He did not mention that the programs were designed to require human oversight, or that they would slowly degrade without updates. He simply took his bag and walked to the shuttle bay. On the medical world of Canthus, human doctors and nurses said goodbye to millions of patients who had come to rely on their care. They did not explain that human medicine was generations ahead of what the Council realized. They did not warn that certain plagues would return without human intervention. They simply packed their equipment and left. In total, 4 million humans lived and worked across Council space. Within 72 hours, every single one of them was gone. The Council noticed, of course, but they did not worry. Humans were useful workers, nothing more. Others could do what they had done. Others could learn their skills. This was the great mistake. Back on Earth, Taiho landed at the spaceport in Seoul. He was greeted by Baek Sun-woo, the planet's young defense minister. Sun-woo was a tall man with sharp eyes and a mind that never stopped calculating. "It is done?" Sun-woo asked. "It is done." Taiho handed him Earth's symbol. "We are alone now." Sun-woo looked at the small blue circle. "No," he said quietly. "We are free now. There is a difference." In the weeks that followed, the galaxy forgot about humanity. There were more important matters to discuss. Wars to prevent. Trade agreements to negotiate. Primitive species to manage. No one wondered where the humans had gone. No one asked what they were doing. No one imagined that for 300 years. Humanity had been preparing for exactly this moment. Silence that followed was not the silence of defeat. It was the silence. Before the storm, 3 months passed before the first problems appeared. On the planet Morvos, the great farms that fed 12 star systems began to die. The crops turned yellow, then brown, then black. Farmers who had grown food for generations suddenly found that nothing would grow. They checked the soil. They checked the water. They checked the seeds. Everything seemed normal, but the plants kept dying. "Call the human experts," the planetary governor ordered. "There are no human experts," his assistant replied. They all left. The governor stared at him. "Then find new ones." But there were no new ones. The irrigation systems that the humans had built were too complex for anyone to understand. The soil treatments that humans had developed were based on formulas that no one else knew. Within 6 months, Morvos was starving. Within a year, they were begging other worlds for food. This was only the beginning, on Station Helix 9. The great trade routes that connected the galaxy began to fail. Ships that had traveled safely for centuries suddenly found themselves lost in space. Navigation errors caused crashes. Delivery schedules fell apart. The cost of transporting goods tripled, then tripled again. Doyen's supervisor, a reptilian officer who had dismissed him so easily, spent weeks trying to fix the navigation programs. "It makes no sense," he said to his team. "The code should work, but it keeps making mistakes." He did not understand that humans had built hidden requirements into every system, small pieces that needed human input to function properly. Without that input, the program slowly broke down. One calculation at a time. On the medical world of Canthus, the situation was even worse. A disease called the Valoran fever, which humans had quietly cured decades ago, returned with terrible force. Millions fell sick. Hospitals overflowed. Doctors from other species tried to develop treatments, but they could not match what human medicine had achieved. "How did the humans cure this?" a desperate medical official asked. "We do not know," came the answer. "They never shared their research, and why would they?" For 300 years, the Council had treated human knowledge as property to be taken, not shared. Human scientists were forced to work for Council institutions, but denied credit for their discoveries. Human medicine was labeled as Council medicine. Human engineering was called Council engineering. Humans were workers, not creators. Now, the creators were gone. And the Council was learning the price of its arrogance, far beyond the edge of known space. Captain Yuna stood on the bridge of her ship and watched the reports coming in from Council territory. She was young for a captain, only 32 years old, with short black hair and eyes that had seen too much in too few years. Before the departure, she had served in the Council's merchant fleet, hauling cargo between worlds that barely acknowledged her existence. Now she commanded a ship in humanity's new navy. The Helix trade route is down 40%, her Lieutenant Doyon reported. He had been reassigned to military service after leaving Station Helix 9. Food shortages on 7 worlds. Medical emergencies on 12. Any response from the Council? Yuna asked. They held an emergency meeting. Blamed pirates and equipment failures? No one mentioned humans. Yuna smiled slightly. Of course not. Admitting they need us would mean admitting they were wrong about us. She turned to look out the window. Outside, the stars were different here. These were stars that no Council ship had ever seen, in a region of space that the Council believed was empty and worthless. But it was not empty. It was home. Humanity had found this place 200 years ago. Explorers had discovered a cluster of 40 habitable worlds hidden behind a dense nebula that blocked all sensors. For 2 centuries, humans had secretly built a civilization here. Cities rose on new planets. Factories produced advanced technology. Schools taught children born in freedom. Far from Council eyes, the Council thought humans were primitive because humans acted primitive. It was the longest and most successful lie in galactic history. Message from Chancellor Sunwoo, Doyon said. All fleet commanders are ordered to stand by. He believes the Valori will attack soon. Yuna nodded. They had expected this. The Valori Empire was aggressive and hungry for territory. They had demanded the human colonies in Sector 7 because they believed humans were too weak to defend themselves. Now that humanity had left the Council's protection, the Valori would surely come to take what they wanted. Are we ready? Doyon asked quietly. We have been ready for 300 years, Yuna replied. Back in Council space, the High Chancellor was dealing with crisis after crisis. Trade was failing. Planets were starving. Diseases were spreading. And everywhere he turned, he found the same answer. Humans had been responsible for things the Council never knew about. How is this possible? He demanded at an emergency meeting. They were Class 7 primitives. They had no technology, no advancement, no importance. An elderly advisor spoke carefully. High Chancellor, perhaps we were wrong about them. Wrong? We tested their planet. We scanned their ships. They had nothing. Had nothing that we could detect, the advisor corrected. That is not the same thing. The Chancellor dismissed this idea with a wave of his forearms. Nonsense. Humans are clever workers, nothing more. We will solve these problems without them. We always have, but they had not. They had never solved these problems because humans had always been there, quietly fixing things, quietly keeping the galaxy running, quietly being ignored on Earth. Taiho watched the same reports from his office in Seoul. He felt no joy at the Council's suffering. He had spent too many years among them to feel satisfaction at their pain. But he felt something else, something that had been building inside him for decades. Vindication. They still do not understand, he said to Sunwoo, who stood beside him. They will, Sunwoo replied. Soon, they will have no choice. In the distance, warning systems activated. Sensors detected a massive fleet approaching from Council space. The Valori Empire had finally made its move. Sunwoo straightened his uniform. And so it begins. Taiho closed his eyes. For 300 years, humanity had waited, planned, and prepared. They had endured insults and injustice. They had smiled while being called primitive. They had built an empire in secret while the galaxy laughed at them. Now, the galaxy would learn the truth. Humanity was not leaving because they were weak. They were leaving because they no longer needed to pretend to be the Valori War. Fleet was the largest military force in the known galaxy. 500 warships, each one capable of destroying a planet. They had conquered 30 species and enslaved billions. Their admiral, a massive creature covered in bone armor, had never lost a battle in his 200-year career. He expected this campaign to be his easiest victory. Human colonies detected ahead, his sensor officer reported. The planet they call New Busan. Population 2 million. The admiral studied the display. The planet was green and blue, much like Earth itself. Humans had terraformed it to match their homeworld. Sentimental creatures. It would make a fine addition to the Empire. Any defenses? He asked. A small fleet. 30 ships. Nothing significant. The admiral laughed, a deep rumbling sound that echoed through his command center. 30 ships against 500? These humans are either brave or stupid.
Admiral!
Open a channel. I will give them one chance to surrender. The communication screen flickered, and a human face appeared. It was a woman with sharp features and cold eyes. She wore a simple gray uniform with no decorations. Behind her, the admiral could see other humans working calmly at their stations. I'm Admiral Vorith of the Valori Empire, he announced. You are surrounded and outmatched. Surrender your world, and your people will be allowed to live as servants of the Empire. Resist, and you will all die. The woman did not blink. I am Commander Shin Minji of the Human Defense Force. You have entered sovereign human space without permission. Leave now, or do not leave at all. The admiral stared at her. For a moment, he was too surprised to speak. Then he began to laugh again. You threaten me? With 30 ships. Human, do you not see the force I command? I see 500 old warships using technology that was outdated 50 years ago, Minji replied calmly. I see engines that waste power and weapons that cannot adjust to moving targets. I see shields that will fail against concentrated fire. She paused. I see an empire that conquered weak species and believes that makes them strong. The admiral's laughter stopped. No one had ever spoken to him this way. You will regret those words. Human. All ships, attack formation. Destroy them. The Valori fleet moved forward like a wave of death. 500 ships against 30. It should have been over in minutes. It was over in 11. The human ships did not fight like anything the Velor had ever seen. They moved with impossible speed, appearing in one place and then another without seeming to cross the space between. Their weapons cut through Valori shields like paper. Their own shields absorbed everything the Velori threw at them. Admiral. Voroth watched in horror as his mighty fleet was torn apart. Ships exploded left and right. His commanders screamed for orders, for help, for retreat. But there was no retreat. The human ships were everywhere at once, blocking every escape route. How is this possible? Voroth shouted. They are primitives. They have no technology. Admiral, his sensor officer said, his voice shaking, their ships are using drive systems we have never seen. Their weapons are... We cannot even identify them. This is not primitive technology. This is... He never finished the sentence. A beam of light struck the sensor station and vaporized it, along with the officer. On the bridge of her own ship, Commander Mingi watched the battle with no expression. Her crew worked in perfect coordination, each person knowing exactly what to do. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. Their parents had trained for it. Their grandparents had trained for it. 300 years of preparation for one moment of truth. Admiral Voreth's flagship is the only major vessel remaining, her tactical officer reported. All other ships destroyed or disabled. Open a channel, Minji ordered. Voreth's face appeared on her screen. He was injured, bleeding from a wound on his head. His bridge was burning behind him. The arrogance was gone from his eyes, replaced by something he had never felt before, fear. This is not possible, he whispered. You are humans. You are weak. We were never weak, Minji said. We were patient. There is a difference. She leaned forward slightly. You came here expecting slaves. You found wolves? Remember this moment, Admiral. Remember it when you explained to your empire how 500 ships were destroyed by 30? You will spare me? Hope entered Voreth's voice. I will spare you so you can deliver a message. Minji's eyes were cold as space itself. Tell the galaxy what you saw here. Tell them that humanity is no longer hiding. Tell them that any fleet that enters our space without permission will meet the same fate as yours. And tell them this: we offer no second warnings. The channel closed. Vorath's damaged flagship limped away from the battlefield, surrounded by the wreckage of his once mighty fleet. News of the battle spread across the galaxy within hours. Intelligence agencies scrambled to understand what had happened. Military commanders demanded explanations. Politicians panicked. The council held an emergency session. For the first time in centuries, fear filled the Grand Hall. "This is impossible," the High Chancellor insisted, but his voice was weak. "Our classifications showed humans had no advanced technology." "Our classifications were wrong," the elderly advisor replied. "Clearly, they have been wrong for a very long time. How could they hide this from us?" The advisor was quiet for a moment. "Perhaps they did not hide it. Perhaps we simply never looked. We saw what we expected to see: a primitive species that was useful for labor. We never considered that they might be something more." The silence that followed. The truth settled over the council like a cold fog. For 300 years, humanity had lived among them. Humans had built their stations, programmed their computers, treated their sick, and managed their trade routes. Humans had been everywhere, seen everything, learned everything, and the council had never noticed because they had never considered. Humans worthy of attention. Now, in the ruins of the Valori fleet, the galaxy was learning a lesson that would change everything. Humanity had not been weak. Humanity had been waiting. And now that the waiting was over, the galaxy would never be the same again. On New Busan, the people celebrated their victory. Children who had grown up hearing stories about the day humanity would reveal its strength watched fireworks light up the sky. Parents held each other and wept. Tea with relief and pride. Commander Minji did not celebrate. She stood alone on the bridge looking out at the stars. "This is only the beginning," she said quietly to herself. "They will come back. They always come back." But when they came back, humanity would be ready. They had always been ready. The council chose their best diplomat for the mission. High Emissary Torvin had negotiated peace between warring empires. He had convinced hostile species to join the council. He had never failed to bring a world under council authority. He was also the same official who, 15 years ago, had called humans useful servants who should be grateful for the scraps we give them. His ship traveled for 3 weeks to reach human space. The journey took them beyond all known star charts, into regions that council sensors had always shown as empty. But they were not empty. As Torvin's ship passed through the nebula that hid humanity's true home, he saw something that made his heart stop. Cities floated among the stars. Massive stations that made the council's greatest constructions look like children's toys. Ships of designs he had never seen patrolled the space lanes. Planets glowed with the lights of civilization, each one home to billions of humans. "This is impossible," he whispered. "They built all of this in 300 years?" His assistant checked the sensors. "Emissary, these structures are not 300 years old. Some of them appear to be much older." Torvin felt cold. "How much older?" "The oldest station we can detect was built approximately 800 years ago." 800 years. Humans had been building an empire in secret for 800 years. 500 years before they even made contact with the council. They had pretended to be primitives for so long that everyone had forgotten to question it, or perhaps everyone had been too arrogant to question it. The human escort ships led Torvin to a planet called New Sol. It was a beautiful world, covered in forests and mountains and vast oceans. As his shuttle descended through the atmosphere, he saw cities that blended perfectly with nature. Technology and beauty existing in harmony. Chancellor Beek Sunwoo met him in a garden filled with cherry blossom trees. The pink flowers drifted through the air like gentle snow. Sunwoo was a tall man in his 50s, with silver hair and eyes that seemed to look through people rather than at them. "Hi, Emissary Torvan," Sunwoo said. His voice was polite, but carried no warmth. "I remember you. You spoke at my graduation ceremony when I was a young diplomat. You told the audience that humans would never amount to anything in galactic politics. Torvon's mouth went dry. Chancellor, you also voted to classify humanity as a Class 7 species when we first petitioned for membership. You argued that we were too primitive to deserve voting rights. Sunwoo gestured to a bench beneath a cherry tree. Please sit. We have much to discuss. They sat facing each other. Torvin had negotiated with dictators and warlords, but he had never felt as nervous as he did now. Everything he thought he knew had been wrong. Everything he had believed about humans had been a lie. The council sends its greetings. Torvin began, using his most diplomatic voice. We wish to discuss the possibility of humanity returning to the council. Under new terms, of course, better terms. Sunwoo said nothing. He simply waited. Torvin continued, sweating slightly. The council recognizes that mistakes were made. Humanity was undervalued. We see now that your species has much to offer. We would like to welcome you back as equal partners. Still, Sunwoo said nothing. Full voting rights, Torvin offered. A seat on the High Assembly. Economic agreements that favor human interests. He paused. The council is prepared to be very generous. Finally, Sunwoo spoke. Generous. Tasted the word like it was something bitter. For 300 years, the council took everything we built and called it their own. Our science became council science. Our medicine became council medicine. Our children were sent to die in council wars while our elders were mocked in council chambers. His eyes grew hard. And now you offer to be generous. Chancellor, please understand. The current council leadership had nothing to do with. The current council leadership voted to sacrifice our colonies to the Valori Empire, Sunwoo interrupted. That was 3 months ago, emissary. Not 300 years. 3 months. He stood and walked to the edge of the garden, looking out at the city below. Your people called us primitive, weak, useful servants. You did not see us as worthy of respect or consideration. We were tools to be used and discarded. Torvin opened his mouth to respond, but Sunwoo raised a hand. Let me tell you what humanity learned in 300 years of service to the council. We learned your languages. We learned your cultures. We learned your technologies and improved them in ways you never imagined. We learned your weaknesses. Turned to face Torvin. We learned that the mighty Galaxy Council is built on a foundation of arrogance and ignorance. We learned that you need us far more than we ever needed you. Then help us, Torvin said, almost begging now. The galaxy is falling apart without you. Trade has collapsed. Planets are starving. Diseases are spreading. We need human expertise to survive. Yes, Sunwoo agreed. You do, but need is not the same as deserve. He returned to his seat. Humanity will consider returning to the council. But not as servants, not as workers, not as Class 7 primitives grateful for scraps. What do you want? Everything you should have given us from the beginning. Sunwoo handed Torvin a datapad. Full and permanent membership with complete voting rights. Reparations for 300 years of exploitation. A formal apology broadcast to every system in the galaxy, acknowledging that humans were deliberately mistreated. Recognition of human territory as sovereign and inviolable. Torvin read the list. His face grew pale. The council will never agree to this. The reparations alone would bankrupt half the member worlds. Then the council can solve its problems without us. Sunwoo stood, signaling that the meeting was over. The galaxy laughed when we left. Let them laugh now, as their systems fail and their people suffer. We did not cause these problems. We simply stopped fixing them. Chancellor, please. Millions will die if we cannot repair the damage. Sunwoo paused at the door. For a moment, something like sympathy crossed his face. I know. That is why I'm giving you this chance at all. Humanity is not cruel. We do not wish to see innocent people suffer. His expression hardened again. But we will not save a galaxy that refuses to acknowledge our worth. Accept our terms, and we will help rebuild everything. Refuse them, and you will learn just how much you lost when you lost us. Torvin left human space with the terms in hand. The journey back to council territory felt much longer than the journey out. He had failed. For the first time in his long career, he had completely, utterly failed. But as he reviewed humanity's demands, he began to understand something. These were not the terms of conquerors. Humans were not asking for power over others. They were not demanding territory or tribute. They were simply asking to be treated as equals. They were asking for what should have been given freely 300 years ago. When he presented the terms to the council, the reaction was exactly what he expected. Outrage, denial, accusations of betrayal. But slowly, as the weeks passed and the crises deepened, the outrage faded. Denial became impossible. The truth could no longer be ignored. The galaxy needed humanity, and humanity had finally named its price. 5 years changed everything. The galaxy. Council still existed, but it was not the same institution that had once dismissed humanity as primitive servants. A new charter governed its operations, written by human lawyers and approved by every member species. Equality was no longer a suggestion. It was law. Earth held a permanent seat on the High Assembly, the most powerful governing body in the galaxy. Human representatives spoke, and others listened. Human ideas shaped policy. Human values, fairness, dignity. The belief that every species deserved respect slowly spread through a civilization that had forgotten such concepts long ago. The Valori Empire was gone. Not destroyed by human weapons, but collapsed from within. After Admiral Voreth's defeat, cracks appeared in the Empire's foundation. Enslaved species saw that the mighty Valori could be beaten. Rebellions erupted on 100 worlds. Some said that human agents helped these rebellions, providing weapons and information. No one could prove it, but everyone suspected. On the planet Morvos, the farms were growing again. Human agricultural teams had returned not as servants, but as partners. They taught local farmers the secrets of the soil. They shared knowledge freely, holding nothing back. For the first time in centuries, Morvos produced more food than it could eat. On Station Helix 9, trade flowed smoothly once more. A human named Kyung Soo now served as Chief Navigation Officer, a position that would have been impossible 5 years ago. His algorithms guided thousands of ships safely through the stars every day. When younger officers asked how humans had learned such advanced mathematics, Kyung Soo just smiled. "We always knew," he said. "We were just waiting for someone to ask." On the medical world of Canthus, the Valoran fever was a memory. Human doctors had shared the cure freely, asking nothing in return. They had also shared cures for dozens of other diseases that the Council had never been unable to treat. Some Council members complained that humans had hidden these cures for centuries. Human doctors simply replied that no one had ever asked for their help. The truth hurt more than any. Accusation, Admiral Yuna, stood on the bridge of the HSS Horizon, the flagship of humanity's exploration fleet. She was older now, 42 years old, with lines around her eyes that spoke of responsibilities carried and battles fought. The ship was preparing to journey beyond the known galaxy, into space that no intelligent species had ever explored. Final systems check complete, her old friend Dojan reported. He had served beside her through everything: the departure, the war, the rebuilding. Now they would explore the unknown together. "We are ready to depart," Yuna nodded. She looked out at the stars, thinking about how far humanity had come. 300 years as servants. 5 years as equals. And now, a future without limits. "What do you think we will find out there?" Doyan asked. "I do not know," Yuna admitted. "Other civilizations, perhaps. New worlds to explore. New challenges to face." She smiled slightly. "I hope whoever we meet is smarter than the Council was. That would not be difficult." They shared a rare laugh. Then Yuna gave the order, and the horizon leaped forward into the unknown darkness. Carrying humanity's hopes into the void back on Earth, children learned a new history. Textbooks no longer spoke of humanity as a young species struggling to survive in a hostile galaxy. Instead, they told the truth. Humanity had always been strong. They had simply chosen to hide their strength until the time was right. Teachers explained how human scientists had worked in Council laboratories, pretending to be assistants while actually leading the research. Students learned how human engineers had built the galaxy's infrastructure while letting others take the credit. They studied how human diplomats had gathered information for centuries. Learning every secret, identifying every weakness, it had been the longest deception in galactic history, and it had worked perfectly. In the Grand Hall of the Galaxy Council, a ceremony was taking place. Hundreds of representatives from hundreds of species watched as Ambassador Park Tai-ho walked slowly toward the Wall of Unity. He was very old now, his hair white and his steps careful. But his eyes were still sharp, still calm, still showing nothing of the emotions he felt inside. 5 years ago, he had removed Earth's symbol from this wall. Today, he would put it back. But first, workers unveiled something new. Beside the space where Earth's symbol would hang, a plaque had been mounted. It was carved from stone, taken from every human world, polished until it shone like a mirror. Words were inscribed on its surface in every language known to the galaxy. Tai-ho read the words silently. He had written them himself. Underestimate humanity once. There will be no second time. The hall was silent as Tai-ho reached up and placed Earth's symbol back on the wall. It was no longer small or hidden at the bottom. It now hung at the center, quilled to the oldest and most powerful species in the council, the High Chancellor, a new one. The old Chancellor, having resigned in disgrace, stepped forward. On behalf of the Galaxy Council, I offer humanity a formal apology for 300 years of injustice. We were wrong. We were blind. We are grateful for the chance to make things right. Tai-ho turned to face the assembled representatives. He saw faces that had once laughed at humanity. He saw species that had called humans primitive, weak, worthless. Now they looked at him with respect. Some looked with fear. Humanity accepts your apology, Tai-ho said. His voice was quiet but carried through the entire hall. We do not forgive. We do not forget. But we accept and we move forward. He paused. The galaxy has learned a valuable lesson. Power is not always loud. Strength is not always obvious. The species you dismiss as weak may be the ones holding your civilization together. He looked around the hall one final time. Remember this lesson. Teach it to your children. Let it echo through the centuries. His eyes hardened, because humanity will never let itself be underestimated again, and we will be watching to make sure no other species suffers as we did. The ceremony ended. Representatives returned to their worlds carrying stories of what they had witnessed. Within months, treatment of smaller species improved across the galaxy. Exploitation became rare, then forbidden. The Council's new charter guaranteed rights to every member, regardless of size or power. Humanity had not just won respect for itself. It had changed the galaxy forever. On New Sol, Chancellor Sunwoo watched the ceremony broadcast from his garden. The cherry blossoms were falling again as they did every spring. He had led humanity through its most important years, transforming them from outcasts to equals. Soon, younger leaders would take his place, but the work was done. Humanity was safe. Humanity was respected. Humanity was free. Sunwoo closed his eyes and let the petals fall around him. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel something other than determination. Pride Commander Shin Mingi retired from the military to teach at the academy on New Busan. Young officers learned strategy and tactics, but also history and patience. They learned that true strength was not about destroying enemies. It was about being so strong that enemies never dared to attack. The galaxy thought we were sheep, she told her students. They learned too late that we were wolves pretending to be sheep. Remember, the pretense is sometimes more powerful than the truth. And somewhere beyond the galactic rim, the HSS Horizon continued its journey into the unknown. Admiral Yuna and her crew carried humanity's message to whatever lay ahead. We are human, we endure. We adapt, we overcome. We were underestimated once. Never again.